Magic.tv is back, and I'm gonna add my better half. Wade, how you doing, my friend?
I am exhausted. It's been a long day.
Yeah, you told me you had some cliff diving to do or something like that.
Yeah, a little old for that, but you know.
Yeah. So anyhow, tonight's episode is another Magic.tv presents. For those of you who don't know, we're taking the brand to a whole new level where we're going to be adding a lot of cool things to Magic.tv, such as the soon to come Magic.tv compendium, the season one compendium, where we're going to be taking all of the occult X techniques that we've been taught by our amazing guests, and we're going to be putting them in there pretty much for anybody to use. It's kind of like a magazine, but the best part will be the commentary that you and I are going to be sharing, right? Where we're going to be looking into these rituals, how they worked for us, giving our own experiential advice. Is this something you're looking forward to doing, brother?
Oh, it's gonna be great. I
We
mean,
like, we like.
it doesn't drop of a hat, to get magic nerds talking about magic, right?
Mhm. And you know what I like about it? Our approach is pretty fun because we don't try to sound like we know everything. We're just like two guys trying to bake a pizza. You know what I mean? It's like, well, that went good on it, right?
Well, it's also I like the fact that it's we do more of a free form thing. It's all about the guest or the subject. We're not trying to pitch things. We're not trying to guide. We're just kind of letting the conversation go where it goes.
Definitely. And like a lot of these things, like I'm not gonna say a lot of it, like 99% of the things that we've been taught in Magic.tv are all very practical methods, techniques, given by seasoned occultists. But what's part of being magic without doing it, right, brother? So what we're gonna be sharing will be like we're gonna look at each technique one by one. We're gonna give our 2 cents. Like I showed you last night the teaser of the rock crystal technique that you taught me in the first episode and how that's been helping me in my journey in fitness and live a more healthier life, which I'm sure it's going to do an interesting thing. And since I did that already with your technique, we're going to be going guest per guest into all the occult tech segments, and we're going to be sharing the rituals, spells, workings from the first season. Then we're going to move to the second, all the way up into the fourth season. So this is going to be something for all of us to look forward to, and it's going to be in print.
It's gonna be fun.
All right, so today, bro, we're talking about ritual magic, okay? And basically, I like to consider this already the steps towards the more intermediate side of magic because there's like dozens of rituals out there, a lot of popular ones, a lot of helpful ones, some that I'm like, I don't know what the F this does. But one thing I get a lot of, especially from my students here in the Philippines, if I tell them about a ritual, they ask me, well, what does it do? And then I give them the occult meaning of like, oh, it's supposed to do this and that and that and this, and they still look at me like I'm a robot. So for today's episode, you and I are going to talk about some of the basic rituals, and from both the basic ritual magic perspective and maybe the thelemic one as well. And we're going to kind of not water it down, but we're going to kind of like simplify it and explain what these do. Okay.
Yeah.
Although there are dozens of rituals out there, we're going to keep it just to the most rudimentary of them. So let's start off today with one which I think kind of overlaps both traditions, which would be the Kabbalistic cross. I'm sure you're familiar with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, go ahead.
Well, it's basically it's just a way of centering yourself on the tree of life.
Uh-huh.
I mean, people say, "Well, what if you're not a Kabbalist?" You're like, "Well, okay, then why are you doing the Kabbalistic cross?" It's basically to center yourself on the tree of life. You can do without it, but really, it's just sort of a you are here. That you're in the captain's chair now
Mm-hmm.
at the center. Um, and there might be times that you're trying to do a different sort of working and you don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's helpful to know what it does.
Well, some people, because like from all the rituals that we're taught, Kabbalistic cross is usually the most common opening ritual because like everybody, like from the LBRP, Lesser Ritual of the Hexagram, even the middle pillar, all these rituals are told start with the Kabbalistic cross. And of
Mhm.
course, from an occultism, like if you have some basic understanding of occultism, you'd say centering yourself on the tree of life. But what if somebody knew zero about the occult? How would you explain this to them?
If somebody knew zero about it, I would probably recommend they don't do it.
Why not?
But if they have to, well, because if you're doing something that you don't understand, I'm going to move this a little bit. If you're doing something you don't understand, the best you can hope for is that nothing would happen.
Very true.
But the worst would be that maybe you're trying to do something that is more appropriate for, Netzach or Malkuth. Well, maybe you don't want to be centered on the tree of life. But in this particular case, seeing as it is sort of the captain's chair, that's a good place to start from. So it would be appropriate to start your ritual from that point, and then proceed to other places if that's what you wanted to do. If somebody doesn't know anything about Kabbalah or the Tree of Life, I would probably recommend just not doing that part of the ritual, or substituting some other sort of centering, some sort of centering gesture. If you want to say, well, okay, I'm positioning myself between heaven and hell, or between, the aethers and, the earth, or something similar, because that's really what it is, as a technique for centering yourself before beginning your ritual. So if you don't want to use the Tree of Life, or you don't know enough about it, you can modify that to center yourself in a different way.
Now, here's a question I want to ask you, though. Would you consider the Kabbalistic cross in its own form dangerous? Could you hurt yourself with
it? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. But you could muddy the water enough that it could affect your work.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you do it improperly, or if you don't understand it properly.
Because for my students here, for those of them who've actually taken a penchant to ritual magic, I've tried to explain it in a similar way that you have, and sometimes you still get a bunch of weird stares because they fully don't understand this, the relationship of the Tree of Life to people, because they've actually taken it piecemeal that ritual magic should be ritual magic, should not have anything to do with sometimes Kabbalah, which is kind of a joke. But to most simplify it to them, I actually tell them the Kabbalistic cross is kind of like your magical on switch. That's what I like to tell them. It's like, use this to plug in. When you're ready to do your magic, when you're ready to do everything with intention, when you're ready to do everything out of will and not just throw your energy all over the place and want to be purely intended and plugged into something more, start it with the Kabbalistic cross. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like putting on your uniform. Whereas
it's like you're getting yourself in the right spot. Say if you're getting ready to cook, you want to be right in front of the prep station.
Exactly. So,
and you want to have, your island over here, your sink over here, your stove behind you. You want to be right centrally located so you can do all the things. And it starts from there.
Exactly. Now, the thing I'm going to ask you, though, is this. I'm not a Thelemite, but all respect to Thelema. Do they adhere to the same practice of the Kabbalistic cross in Thelema as they did with the Golden Dawn, or do you guys have your own thing?
In the OTO, it's less emphasized, but it is still there.
All right. Now, which is going to lead me to my next question. Especially for Thelemites, they have a very interesting beginner's technique that they call Liber Resh. I don't understand fully its utility. I'd like you to walk us through this and how it's done, if you don't mind me sharing. I mean, if you don't mind sharing.
Liber Resh is it's a solar invocation you do 4 times a day at, sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight. Mm-hmm. And you basically invoke the 4 stations of the sun using 4 different Egyptian god forms at each time. And that's basically just to attune yourself to the solar cycle. Now, it's not written down, but you can do this for any of the planets. Say if you're doing Jupiter working. You just have to find out what sign Jupiter's in, what time it rises and sets, and all that, and then just basically calculate that, because it's going to be the same 24-hour cycle. It's just going to start at different times. So it's really about just aligning or attuning yourself to the sun, or whichever planet you do it for.
And as a magician, what would you say, Wade, is the practical application of this? Like, how do we benefit from doing Liberesh every day for like a month?
I would do it if you're gearing up to do the to invoke your holy guardian angel, because that's identified with Tiferet, the sun, the center of the Kabbalistic cross, everything. It all comes off of that one focal point, which would be the sun. So I would recommend it for that.
And is it something that you can use as needed, or is it something that builds upon itself, that the more you do it, the better or the more potent your response to this ritual will be?
Oh yeah, the more you do it, the more if it becomes a habit, the more you start to notice the effects of not doing it. It's sort of like it builds up momentum behind your magic.
Okay. So is this something you would recommend to beginners, or is this something that like you would say somebody only with a serious or a substantial magical practice should actually incorporate into their discipline?
I would say more intermediate.
More intermediate.
Maybe not for someone who's just starting out, but someone who's comfortable with ritual and has the headspace to be able to revolve their day around this, the cycle of this ritual.
I see. And of course, going back to what I said in the first ritual, Kabbalistic cross, there's no inherent dangers with Liberesh. And of course, I know the answer to this, but for the people who are just listening who want to know more about these basic rituals, this is coming from Wade. It's Wade himself.
Do you mean dangers of this ritual?
Yeah, is it dangerous? Is there anything that can go wrong?
No.
Does anything go awry?
The only way that you could mess things up with this is if you did it wrong.
And how does one go about doing it wrong, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, well, like if you mixed up the god forms, you did the wrong one at the wrong station, if you did them at the wrong time. And really, it just wouldn't be dangerous so much as ineffective.
Oh, so be more ineffective than dangerous. All right, that's a good one. Because we're going to move now to the third of the rituals that we're going to discuss, which is very popular amongst people in the Golden Dawn and the Hermetic traditions, which is, of course, the lesser ritual of the pentagram. What is it called in Thelema? Is that the Star Ruby or Star Sapphire? I'm correct.
Oh, no. That's two separate things. We should actually do that one last.
Oh, we'll do that last.
Because that's going to be a whole big thing.
I got it. So let's go back to the lesser ritual of the pentagram. The mistake people make is that they always just refer to the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, right? Everybody's saying about the lesser banishing, but they forget it comes in two forms.
Well, it's basically just the ritual of the pentagram, and then there's just variations on that.
Yep, very much.
So what that's for is setting the elemental tone of your space. Say if you wanted to invoke air for communication, you would go ahead and you would go around and do that. But specifically, the LBRP is banishing earth, and a lot of people get it wrong in that they'll say you don't want to end with that because that banishes what you just did. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. What it's banishing is the element of earth, and which is solidity, stability, that sort of thing, manifestation of the unchanging aspect of earth that locks things into where they are. So when you banish it, when you banish Earth, you're sort of softening your world, almost as if. And he recommended that for the Golden Dawn, they would make their students do it, twice a day when they get up in the morning and then before they go to bed at night, for a year, for a whole ass year, and basically what you're doing with it is, say, if you have a piece of hardened clay, this is like wrapping wet towels around it to get it to soften up to where you can work with it. Or like putting a piece of iron in a forge to make it soft so you can work with it.
Let me augment that. So let's say if we're using the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram of Earth to banish smoking, because we don't want to smoke anymore, we are basically depriving the concept and the energy of smoking of an earthly manifestation so that we can get it out of our system. Am I correct?
I wouldn't lead with it that way.
Mm-hmm.
What I would do is I would have a separate ritual for banishing smoking, but I would open and close with the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, because ultimately here's what's happening. Okay, when you're doing magic, okay, you're basically telling the universe a lie. And because it says A is A, you're telling the universe A is B. And if you can do it convincingly enough, the universe is like, yeah, A is B. This is good. Okay. So what you're doing is you're setting up a cognitive dissonance between the world that is and the world that you want. And this creates a tension in between, in between reality and what you're manifesting. Now, the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram dissolves that tension and directs the force into into the manifest. Basically, it's like, you remember those old football games? It was just a big metal tray.
Yeah.
And you'd set the pieces up, and then when you turn it on and it vibrates and all the players move the way you programmed them. That's what the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram does. You set your pieces up, you have all the directions they're supposed to go. That creates the tension, and then you flip that switch, and it moves everything around according to the directions it's been given. So that's what the LBRP does, is it just softens the world up to let your magic work.
Fascinating.
You're not really banishing a thing with it. You're just releasing the universe being locked in place.
Why is it then that some occultists say that the banishing ritual of the pentagram is kind of like a good way of getting rid of negative energies in your life or things that you don't want? If that's the case, like people would tell you, "Oh, you've had a bad day, you've had a bad reading, a bad ritual. It's a good time for you to perform the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram."
Not so much. I mean, honestly, if you have it in your mind that you want to get rid of that negativity, and you do the LBRP, then it'll help manifest your will. But the ritual itself just kind of creates the space for change to happen.
Sounds good. Now it's going to bring me to the next one. Of course, a lot of people love to talk about the LBRP, but people rarely talk about the LIRP, the invoking. From your point of view, what does it do, and how do you use it?
Well, all the pentagram rituals, like the standard pentagram rituals, banishing or invoking any of the elements, those are really just like I was saying before. Say if you're doing fire magic, you invoke fire. You would do the LBRP first, and then you would invoke fire. With upright pentagrams, not averse. You don't want actual physical fire in your temple.
Yeah, you don't want that.
But or maybe you do. But that was the well, for example, when the Oakland Hills fires back in the 90s happened, We had some people that we were doing banishing earth, and then invoking Aver's invocation of water
Mm-hmm.
to draw rain, and other people were banishing using banishing Aver's pentagrams of fire. But they still, both teams were still using the LBRP to kind of create the space for a change to happen.
Interesting, because like from what one occultist I've read, especially doing not the elemental ones, so like fire, water, just the basic LIRP. One occultist I know said that you do the LIRP when you want to go off script. In other words, if you don't like a particular direction that your life is going on, you can use the invoking ritual of the pentagram to kind of like change trajectory of how you're going. Now, for the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, some of those texts I've read have said that like when there are things that you don't want, or when you kind of want to like um, format your energy, it's a good way of doing it. But the danger that comes with that is that people talk about banishing all the time, but they end up just banishing everything. They banish the negative stuff and they banish the positive stuff. And these things just end up stacking and stacking, and like all your work next, is just deleted. It's like imagine writing a whole book on your computer, and once you're done, instead of saving it, you just format the computer. While the invoking ritual is kind of like, okay, well, I need new software. Let's install this new software. What's your take on these inputs?
Well, the banishing ritual, the LBRP doesn't really banish what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
All it does is it banishes the status of it being locked in place.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be like if you open a document and you want to write on it, but it's in read only format.
Yeah.
Can't write on it. Do the LBRP, now you can write on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how about the invoking? How would you take that?
Well, again, that would be for whatever. If you wanted to invoke Earth on something
Mm-hmm.
to kind of lock it in place or keep it from changing, that's what I would use that for.
Amazing. So, example, if you have a streak of good luck and you want it to continue, want to lock it in place, you can use the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram. Am I correct?
Exactly. Anything that you're trying to maintain the status quo.
All right. So, in other words, if you're trying to keep up good habits, right? Or you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep up like a positive mindset and you don't want to lose track, you don't want to lose momentum, the invoking ritual can help you keep it sustained. Does that sound just about right?
Or like say if you manage to quit smoking for a week and you're like, okay, I'm starting to detox. I want to lock this down and keep it like this
Mm-hmm.
for as long as I can. Then yeah, you would use you would invoke Earth on that.
All right, then it's going to bring us to the second of the last of because there's so many rituals out there, brother. We could go until the end of time about them, and I don't want to kind of like overload our viewers. And I know you're pretty tired too.
I do.
Huh?
I do.
Yeah, well, yeah, but
They can just play it back.
Yeah, we'll just play it by ear. But the thing is, the next one I'm going to ask you is a very popular one as well. A lot of people have talked about it, but I don't think it's been fully explored the potential of it, which is the middle pillar. Now, please,
Mm-hmm.
Wade, take it away. What do we use the middle pillar for?
The middle pillar is sort of like what you would use for lighting and balancing your chakras.
Mm-hmm.
But the ritual itself maps them on the tree of life.
Mm-hmm.
I do chakra work without the tree of life, but I like to do that. I like to run my chakras after I work out,
Yeah.
because I've got a lot of excess energy, and that sort of redistributes it, brings it back around, and I'm using up like the last bits of it. So you can do it as an opening and closing ritual for exactly that reason. Say if you wanted to start off, your ritual, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna, banish Earth, and then I'm going to, invoke water for intuition. I'm going to do the middle pillar to light up all my chakras. then I'm going to charge this talisman for psychic ability for whatever it is you're doing. Then I do a quick invoke earth on that, and then I'll do the same rituals in reverse order to close it out. That would be, because then you would be kind of drawing that energy back in, and repurposing it so that you don't end up, because a lot of times when you go through like an intense series of rituals, you can really burn yourself out.
Mm-hmm. So basically, what you'd say is that the middle pillar is kind of like an energy stabilizer. Am I correct?
Yes, like a grounding.
So in other words, like if you feel you've been doing too much magic and you feel a little bit like overwhelmed by it, or you kind of feel like you've been cooked by it, you can use the middle pillar to kind of just ground and balance that energy in you into a more neutral state, right?
Or if you're having issues with one particular chakra, say if you are always dealing with fear,
Mm-hmm.
or if you have feelings of guilt, whatever these obsessive thoughts are, you can just run your chakras and balance that right out.
That's fascinating. Now, does the same principle apply when it comes to like the spheres on on the tree of life juxtaposed on your body? Like example, if you're too angry, you want to address Gebura energy, or is it not valid?
That doesn't run on the middle pillar. That one is on the pillar of severity.
Okay.
But I've never tried to do the whole tree with the middle pillar ritual.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you can. I haven't done it.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So, like, for those of you out there tuning in and you want to know what's the utility of a middle pillar ritual, well, if you feel a little bit overcooked from your magical occult practices, be it through healing, be it through reading tarot, astrology, or even just straight up rituals, and you want to go back to normal, middle pillar is the best thing for you. Which is going to bring me now to the last two, which I'm very curious about. I want to get this from you, from your state of knowledge and wisdom. The Star Ruby and the Star Sapphire. I am not a Thelemite. I know nothing about these. I'd love to know about from you what they do and what their utility are. And is this something that we should be messing with or wait till later days?
Well, these are. It's the Star Ruby and Star Sapphire are a pentagram and hexagram ritual, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
But they're for the supernal triad.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's Chesed and Bina, but they are for they're not really for banishing. It's really more about setting up a space for these types of energies, and some people just kind of throw them in their ritual as a my alarm went off. It's showtime.
Huh.
So, a lot of people just sort of throw them in their ritual as a way to cap off their openers before they start to do things. But they're basically a higher vibration of the pentagram and hexagram rituals, not for any specific element or planet, just for the like the microcosm and macrocosm in general.
So how would you say we use like the star? Is it what's the smaller one, the ruby or the Star Sapphire?
The smaller one?
Like what's the pentagram equivalent? Is it the Star Ruby or the Star Sapphire?
Oh, neither one is lesser.
Okay.
If anything, you would use the Star Ruby to come from the position of the macrocosm, from Hadith, from the inmost point, and the Star Sapphire would be for the circle with no circumference. the outmost rim. So you would kind of use them almost like for the supernal triad. It's basically like, Big Mom and Big Dad. But yeah, it's more about invoking that energy on yourself.
And is this something that you'd recommend to a beginner to learn, or would you say they should kind of understand the basics like the LBRP or the LRP and the lesser hexagram ritual before they start
Yeah,
jumping into these?
I would recommend working with the regular pentagram rituals first, because the Star Ruby and Star Sapphire are more specifically thelemic,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like the greater ritual of the pentagram,
Yeah, we could talk about those
which
in another episode. Like,
has different it just has different holy names, and then there's the supreme ritual of the pentagram, which
Mhm.
is in Enochian, but it honestly, they don't do anything special.
Mhm.
They're just variants.
Okay, I have one last one for you, and I'd love to get your 2 cents on this one. What about the bornless slash headless rite?
That was the predecessor of Liber Somic.
Mm-hmm.
That's when that's for your holy guardian angel. But the bornless ritual, I believe, was Greek. Was that from the PGM?
Yeah, PGM.
Okay. Um, I'm less familiar with that, but I do know I do remember that there was actually an ancient script
Yeah.
for that particular ritual, which did form the basis for Liber Somic to be kind of amalgamated between the Book of Abramelin and the headless ritual.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's where you invoking your holy guardian angel.
And what's your take on it? Is it something you'd recommend practitioners to use, or do you think it could be a little bit dangerous? Because I know Crowley had his own version of it, which was the bornless rite. The Steel of
Mhm.
Jew was the original version of it from the PGM. I have my own practice of it, so I'd like to ask you: is this something you would personally use or recommend? Do you think it's dangerous, or do you think it's something very helpful? What's your take on it?
I haven't used it myself. I mean, there's even a version of it in the Necronomicon.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's well, the Necronomicon was all written, mapped on Crowley's ritual formulas, and they have the one was the invocation of the dead god.
Might be the fire god.
I I'm I'd have to look it up, but yeah, invoking your holy guardian angel is really not the only danger is going to be to your sanity, I guess. I suppose.
Fascinating, fascinating. I didn't even know there was a Necronomicon version of that. Actually, now that you mention it, makes me something to look forward to. But I don't want to overload the people with these rituals yet. What we're going to be doing is some of these are going to be discussed in depth, some by some of our other specialists. Like example, we were taught a very, very helpful technique by Scott Michael Stenwick about the operating field, which is how he combines the use of the lesser rituals of the hexagram and pentagram. And that's going to be definitely within the Magic.tv compendium once it comes out. But aside from that, that pretty much gives us a good starting point. Wade and I have shared with you some of the practical uses for some of these things. And I like to tell people, if the ritual seems too complex for you to do, that you're not fully grasping it, or it seems too much, kind of leave your ego at the door and master the basic stuff first before you jump to something else. I mean, learning to banish, learning the lesser ritual of the pentagram, learning the hexagram rituals would be a very useful technique to have for your practices, but your magic doesn't end there. Your
Quick
magic always be
practical tip. You got a practical tip.
yo.
I've seen people do the LBRP when they're just sort of take the time, get some push pins, lay out a pentagram on your wall,
Mm-hmm.
nice and evenly spaced, and actually get the muscle memory of drawing a proper pentagram.
Yep.
That's and you know, if it's like 3 feet across on your wall and you're standing in the middle of the room, you will actually have the proper, you know, gesture for it. And then you can make it like nice and neat pentagram.
And another thing about it's like sometimes when you study something as for us it's beginners, but something as beginner as the lesser ritual of the pentagram, you might find yourself a bit daunted of all the steps, of all the things that need to do. It can be very overwhelming, starting off with the tracing of the pentagrams, the visualizations, the vibration of the holy names of God, all those things. And my suggestion to all of you out there is just continue doing it like the same way you would do dance steps. You will not be doing it perfectly at first. Okay? At first, you might feel your lesser ritual, banishing ritual of the pentagram is crap. But a crappy lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, if you ask me, is better than no lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. And as you start to develop the muscle memory, the of the gestures, that's when you can start focusing more on the visualizations. And once that's done, then once you've mastered the visualizations and mastered the gestures, then you can focus on the vibration of the holy names. So in the end, it basically becomes your own expression of this ritual. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And then one very valuable thing is, if you can, even slightly on a piece of paper or even on your notepad on your phone, take note. How did you feel before the ritual? How did you feel after? Because if you see results for what you're doing, even in a small level, you're going to continue doing it. The only reason you're not going to do a ritual after you've learned it is you're going to say it's either too complex or it didn't do shit. But if you felt something, you felt a change or you observed a change, chances are you're going to find a way of doing it again. That sound good to you, Wade?
Yeah, I mean, you'll start getting your internal muscle memory.
Exactly.
To the point where you can just go and do it and you know it's all happening around you.
True. But then also don't be the dickwad and think that you're the uber magus and you're going to do the supreme ultimate golden goose ritual of the turkey and summon God Batman. Okay? A lot of ego gets people burnt or it'll just get them disappointed in magic. Magic is still a magical craft. I like to kind of compare it to martial arts, that it's something that the more you do, the better you're going to get at it. With that being said, anything you want to share to your friends out there, Wade? We've got a lot of people tuning in tonight.
You honestly, just start practicing.
Exactly. I want to shout out to somebody. One of Marco Visconti's friends, and he's going to kill me, came out with a very good book on the rituals. It was like the magical compendium. I'm going to share it on the website. I'm trying to get him on the show. But what I love about it is how well the ritual movements are illustrated. It's a very visual, beautiful visual piece of work that can help you get started on the rituals, and you should check it out. It's like a magical magician's companion or something like that. I forgot the name. I'm sorry for doing that. They have a Knox edition. That's what I know. The Knox edition is to die for. I mean, I would buy you one as a gift, Wade, but it would just gather dust. You're like, Rob, I know all this shit. You know what I mean? It's like it's never going to top the Grimoire Encyclopedia that I got you for Christmas. So it's a beautiful thing. It's good for people who are getting into ritual magic. And at the end of the day, the more you do it, the better you'll be at it. Now, don't feel sad or don't feel bad if when you're doing your rituals, you know, you don't have the full juju of your will behind it yet because you're still learning it. But once you've mastered it and once you've got it down pat, that's when you can put your pure intention. You could fuel it with more will because now you don't need to worry about the movements anymore. You just worry about the execution, and you want to do it because you want the result. You don't want to look dumb saying weird names of God. So with that being said, go ahead. Wade, you're going to say something?
No, that was it. I was agreeing with you.
I'm going to see you guys probably a week or two from now when me and Wade either come back and talk to part 2 of the basic rituals, or we might have a special guest in the weeks to come. So see you soon. Wade, don't go anywhere.